At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
It is a new day for 911 professionals. They have gone from the most important person you will never see to the most vital piece of public safety. Truth be told, they always have been. The curtain has been pulled back, and they are sharing their stories. Welcome to Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday, by Ricardo Martinez II, and narrated by myself, Ricardo Martinez II, and distributed by Beacon Audio Books. Copyright 2023. That's right, everyone. Finally, I can let everyone know the rumors are true. Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday is now available as an audiobook on Audible, and it's a long time coming. Very excited. Not a lot of authors get the opportunity to voice their own book, but I had the honor and privilege to do so. So thank you to Beacon Audio Books, as well as my publisher, Titled Town Publishing, for everything, but especially all of you for making the I Am 911 movement, as well as Imagine Listening, what it is today. I appreciate you all more than you know. So go ahead, head out, stream it, download it, however you consume your audiobooks. Imagine Listening is now available. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 528 of Within the Trenches, True Stories from the 911 Dispatchers Who Live Them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you for everything, but especially all of you who are watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. I appreciate it so very much. There's a lot going on this week. It is actually January 22nd, 2024, and damn it, I got it right. I say that because there have been a couple times where I've been still writing 2023. I think we all go through that. And so I said it right the first time. So awesome. Pat on my back for that. It is, again, January 22nd, 2024. We're already going to be done with the first month of the new year. Holy moly, it is going super fast, but also a lot of things coming up. A lot of great episodes, more content being pushed out there on social media, as well as the website, and heading out to different dispatch centers, whether I'm going to be there teaching or I'm going there. I've got one coming up in a few days where I'm going to be going out to do a book signing. And the director there and I are friends. We've known each other for years. So they ended up purchasing a bunch of the Imagine Listening books for all of their folks. And I will be going out there to not only sign them, but also record episodes with some of their folks and do some B-roll inside the dispatch center and everything so that you can see what it looks like, how everything works. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be doing that, but also some of the conferences that are coming up as well. So make sure to look out for all of that stuff that's going to be coming up, and I'm excited for it. So stay tuned for that. Now, I have a guest today. I'm excited to have her on. It is going to be excellent. It has we've been talking back and forth and stuff about doing an episode, so I'm excited to have Reese on. This is Reese and 911 communications officer out of Defiance County Sheriff's Office in Ohio. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be excellent. You made me chuckle last night when we during open mic when I said, we're gonna be talking tomorrow," and you're like, "I'm excited, but I'm nervous."
I am super nervous.
No, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be fun because really it would be something if this was like an interview where you're like coming in for a job and you don't know what I'm going to be asking you. But really, all of this is about you. It's about your story. And, but you know what? I guess in a sense too, like not everybody wants to talk about themselves, right?
Right.
Yeah. But the cool thing though is that a lot of people are gonna hear your story. They're gonna be able to relate with you, especially those who are just coming in as well. You've got just over 4 years in the profession, right?
Correct. Just over
So
4.
excellent. So fairly new, right? And you've got
Mhm.
others that are coming in, so they're going to be learning from you. But also, I like this as well because there are a lot of seasoned, like veteran dispatchers as well that listen. And I feel like conversations like this, whether it be seasoned or newer folks, kind of bridges that gap. Some of the things that we were talking about back at the Ohio mini conference on the Triumph Through Struggle, where we got to find a way to really communicate with each other because we do it every day, right, over the
Right.
phone. But why can't we do that with each other?
Right. It's a good
I don't
question.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, like we're amazing at communications, but when it comes to communicating with each other, it doesn't always happen. And I'm not sure what it is, but I think we're making a change. I think the more that we talk about this and the more we put that question out there, things are starting to change. So
Mhm.
that's a good thing. I like that. It is very good. So how's everything going? Like, how are you doing today? How's the weather over there? Because I know, like us over here in Indiana, there was a lot of snow going through.
We don't have a lot of snow, probably
Hmm.
about an inch and a half, 2 inches still. I know that we're supposed to be getting freezing rain tonight into tomorrow, where it's, I think, about maybe 2/10 of an inch.
Oof.
So I'm not looking forward to that, but other than that, it's not below freezing, so that's good.
That is good. So here's the question: is it the same way in your area when snow comes down? It seems like everyone forgets how to drive.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You get that first snow and you dread going into work because you know you're just gonna get a ton of slide offs and everything else. And as long as everyone's fine, I guess it's okay. But
Exactly, and but the part that sucks though is and for those who are watching and listening, you might know what we're talking about, and some of you might not, but during that shift change, like when people are coming home from work, it's whether they're going into work or they're coming home from work, it's usually when everything is just going to hell, and you're like, "What?" It
yep.
feels like it's been hours, but it's only been 10 minutes.
Yes.
I don't understand it, man. It happens every year, but some of
Mhm.
it, makes for some interesting calls as well. But as we're going into some of that stuff and everything, let's go back in time for you. And
Okay.
just over 4 years ago, how did you get into public safety to begin with?
So I was already in the correction center in Northwest Ohio, which is our regional jail. I
Mhm.
had been there for about 6 years. I should say a little over 6 years. Just kind of got to the point where I was done with being in the jail. the jail's a lot. It's not made for everyone. I'm not saying that it's not made for me, but I got to the point where I was just done.
Mhm.
And I went and I came back and I talked to our sheriff and he told me to apply and I got offered the job and I moved as soon as possible over to communications and I've been here ever since.
Oh, man. So I wanna touch on corrections here really quick for a moment. When I was first starting in the last center that I was at, in the county that I grew up in, Allegan County, one of the things that we needed to do during training was to go and see, like, some of the other agencies and how they do certain things, and, for us, one of those was going into the jail and just
Mhm.
kinda chilling in there, and some of the things that I saw, I thought, "This is what you guys deal with every day?" And they're like, "Yeah, dude, we had a person who was in the cell that like the drunk tank
Mhm.
that they have there." Like, there's a bunch of people in there, right? But there was a dude that was in there who I think he was by, and this is dating myself, but like a payphone, and and the person was like throwing their poo like all over the walls and stuff. And I said, "Are you serious?" And they said, "Yeah," and I said, "No, really?" And they said, "No, that does happen." And I was like, "Well,
Absolutely.
so what do you do when something like that happens?"
Well, it's kind of hard because some people just do it all the time, like it's just nonstop. As long as you can verify that they're okay, you just verify that they're okay. And usually, I believe it was like 72 hours at the time that I was there.
Mhm.
After 72 hours, we would take them out of the cell, have the cell cleaned down, put them back in it, and then it would just go back to the way it was. Like,
Oh, man.
there's some people that just don't stop. So,
Oh, geez. Yeah, I there was stuff like that, and then, just kind of watching how, they would process someone,
mm,
the belongings, and then, you just the whole process, just all of it, and I just remember standing there like, "Damn, like, this is pretty interesting, like, it's
yeah.
just like on TV, but I'm right here." Was there was there anything during that time that, you were in corrections, just I don't know, maybe anything that kinda surprised you, during the time that you were there, or even when you were first getting into that portion of your public safety career, like, "This is different than I thought it was gonna be."
Nothing really surprised me, I guess.
Mhm,
Um, Once I started, because when you first start there, they don't allow you to work maximum security right away. You start off in minimum and medium. So you don't really see that degree of behavior necessarily right away.
mhm.
And then once you get your year in, they allowed you to go back to max. And I worked intake and central. And you were kind of taken aback by some of the stuff that people would do or people would say. I always try to treat people like they're human. I mean, they deserve it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And there's some people who don't,
Mhm.
unfortunately, and that's sad. But I mean, I think that the biggest thing that surprised me is the stuff that people were okay with saying and or yelling at you on a daily basis. I mean, working back in Max, I've been threatened to be murdered, I've been threatened to be raped, I've been threatened like everything. So it's
Jeez.
you get used to it for lack of a better term, unfortunately. The only time that I actually ever became concerned was I had we started taking federal inmates, and I had a guy that had threatened to come murder me like in a week. And we were in the process of switching over insurances, and our insurance company never told us that they were sending someone out. And I ended up, my shepherd woke me up. I was on third shift at the time, and he woke me up, and there was a guy standing in my backyard. Well, here I found out it was the insurance adjuster.
Oh,
But I'm like,
dude.
you can't just walk into my backyard, my guy. Like, I I thought that someone was actually there to do something. I've never been afraid of it, but that was the first time that I was like, oh, okay, holy shit, like this is happening.
Oh my god. I would have been freaked out too, like, I've got goosebumps on my arms just thinking about that, like, holy moly. Yeah, to have a threat like that come out and you're like, okay, this is stuff that people say all the time because of where
Right.
they're at, what I do, that they just want to scare me or whatever. They want to get that satisfaction, that power trip, right? That ego
Mhm.
trip. But then to be at home and then someone just like show up out of nowhere and think,
Mhm.
"Oh, wait, huh? Holy crap." Well, yeah, I was not expecting that. That's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, it
So
was.
so you do that for, for that amount of time and everything,
Mhm.
and you end up, there's this opening, and you end up getting a chance to move over, so
Mhm.
you already had this experience and everything. Now, do you come from a family of public safety, or is it just you and you got into it?
Nope, I come from a family of public safety.
Mhm.
My grandpa was chief of police in Hicksville. My dad was a lieutenant on the sheriff's office, and he was there for 35 years. And then my mom was a first female road deputy in Northwest Ohio for the Defiance County Sheriff's Office. So,
Oh, man, that's awesome.
yep,
Very
that's
cool. So you have this lineage. So that is pretty awesome that,
correct.
that you had that. So you've got, the experience, like, growing up and probably hearing a lot of this stuff, then getting into corrections and such. So you hear things on the radio, and you have the opportunity to end up going into communications. Now,
Mhm.
did you get a chance to sit in first before doing that, or you just jump right in?
So I basically feel like I grew up in our sheriff's office.
Mhm.
I was there all the time when I was little. When it got to the point where I could drive, used to go up and sit at the dispatch center for quite a few hours, sometimes whole shifts. Um, and then I would just go home. But I didn't sit in like right before I was hired or anything like that. They knew that I knew what it was about and stuff. So, but I used to sit up there multiple days, multiple hours. So,
Oh, so you definitely had all of that was going in. So then when you got into communications,
mhm.
for that part as well, was there anything that, surprised you? Like, when you walked in, you saw all the monitors and everything else and seeing people basically working like a well-oiled machine. Did you have any of those, those first time, first job, feelings of, "Damn, am I gonna be able to do this?" Or did you feel overwhelmed at all or anything?
So it's different when I used to come in and I used to sit down and talk with them and everything else.
Yeah.
But once you come in and it's your job and you're actually like logging into all those monitors and you're like, holy shit, like I'm in charge of this and this and this. And it's very overwhelming when you first come in and you do sit there and you start to think, man, am I going to hear everything that I need to? I mean, with my dad growing up, he had a scanner. He had a scanner in the car, he had a scanner in his workshop, and he had a scanner in the bedroom. And so you heard that scanner daily, no matter where you were. So I kind of felt like I had a good idea of what was being said on the radio, but until you're actually the one that has to listen to it and you're responsible for it, it's a lot different and it is very overwhelming at first.
Oh, man. So you had all of that even growing up, hearing the traffic, so you were kind of training a little bit from the beginning because you could
Right.
probably go into a room and let me start it with this first. So one of the centers that I was trying to get into, the last center that I worked at, when I was trying to get in there, I was trying to get into another center at the same time. And the other center, one of their testing was like 30 of us in a room, bad acoustics, and just, intercom speakers and such. And they were playing audio. And we needed to write down what we thought dispatch and the officer was talking about. Now, I already had about 4 years of experience in dispatch working in Florida. So I knew what I was hearing, but there were a lot of people. And I remember looking around and you could see them going, like, making faces like I have, like, you could tell they had no idea, no
Mhm.
idea, and they weren't really writing or anything, so those 30 got whittled down to, like, 10 or 15 people,
Mhm.
and, because, we had, well, at least I did, I had that experience, so, like, for you as well, growing up and everything, you kind of had that experience already listening, and you could tell what people were saying over the radio because a lot of people, they sound like they're eating their mic.
No, that's still a thing.
Yeah.
So, so I had an advantage because I knew a good majority of my 10 codes,
Mhm.
and to hear some of the guys, I knew what they were saying or I could understand them. There are some that still sound like they're eating their mic. God bless them. Like they're such good guys, but some of them, they just are so hard to understand. And you get your poor new people that come in and stuff like that. When they would go to third shift for a while, third shift was one where that was where a lot of the guys were. And the guys would get so frustrated, and I'm like, you just got to try to power through it, and you got to try to understand them. I said, listen to them on your off days, whatever the case may be, you'll get there, but it is hard to understand them sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, and for those who are watching and listening that are, the general public, there is a device that centers have where I mean, it's because everything is recorded and you can play it back. However, when you're working and you're doing that, that's not something you're supposed to be using all the time. You don't rely on that because, like everything, not everything's gonna work all the time, and what I mean is that that recording might not get picked up, and you go back to check it out, and you're like, "Oh, shit." So, you gotta jump right back in and "Doop, central to, whatever unit, can you repeat?" Even if it's gonna piss them off and you know it's going to, you need to ask because if you don't know what they just said, it could be, it could turn into something.
Hmm.
It could be a location that someone said really fast, and you need to have kind of that thick skin as well to get back in there and ask, and whether you feel embarrassed or it doesn't matter because you have to ask.
Yep, absolutely. It's a major officer safety issue.
Yeah.
If you're not asking, I know that a lot of new people, me included, I didn't want to have to repeat or ask them to repeat, because they do get upset with you. And
Mhm.
I get it to a degree. I mean, it's an officer safety issue. I want all my guys to go home at night. And if I'm not hearing them, then that's a me thing, not a them thing.
Yeah, there was I can't believe I'm gonna tell the story, but there was one time when I was in training in the last center that I was at, I was working on radios. I have my trainer sitting right next to me, and I've got my headset on, and I could not hear them. Like, it sounded like they were at the bottom of a barrel. And I kept asking to repeat, and I look over at my trainer and she goes, "Can you really not hear what they're saying?" She goes, "I have it turned all the way up. I can't even I don't know how you're not hearing them." So this is what happened. She sent me to the hospital for them to check me out really quick because I told her too. I said, "I don't know what's going on." I said, "But I can't hear them." And I said, "My left ear was plugged up a little bit last night." I said, "I'm not sick or anything, but it was plugged up." And now I feel like my right one is. So I went to the hospital and I told them what was going on, and they said, "Um, do you do you ever put like solution in your ears or anything to clean them out?" And I said, "I clean them. I shower. I'm not the stinky kid in school. Like, that's not what's going on." And they said, "Well, maybe you're just one of those folks that builds up earwax more than others." And I was like, "I feel like you said that to make me feel better, but okay." And, so they ended up cleaning my ears out, and I won't go into detail of what I saw, but they cleaned my ears out, and I shit you not, when they were done with both ears, it was like, like I could hear everything. But I also got completely disoriented. I said, "Am I supposed to feel like I'm super trashed right now?" And they said, "Oh, we might have gone too far down." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So, like, my whole equilibrium, like, it was like a vertigo spell. If anyone has ever had one of those
Wow.
before, everything just started spinning, and I laid back for it was only a couple minutes. It was super fast, but also scary. And I sat up, and they're like, "Are you feeling better?" I was like, "Are you yelling?" They're like, "Nope, this is I'm talking in a normal tone." I was like, "Wow, I don't know what was wrong with my ears, man." So I go back into dispatch and I sat at radios again, and I had everything turned, like, not even in the middle, it was turned down because I could finally hear.
Oh, wow.
I almost forgotten about that. Oh, yeah. So, I was finally able to hear and everything, but, I wanted to say all of that too because part of that technology that we have, whether it be, the technology that's been out there for like recorders and everything, or technology that's out there now, AI, video to 911, text for 911, stuff like Rapid SOS or anything like that. Um, we're able to use those for the greater good. But when it goes back to that recording part, you can't rely on it. But also with some of the other technology as well, you have to make sure to ask people where they're at. You have to verify all that stuff, right?
Right. Correct.
And I tell so, like, my siblings, and I don't know if you tell your family, your friends, or anything like this. Coming from a law enforcement family, you probably don't. They already know to do this. Maybe friends, but I always tell my siblings, like, "Know your surroundings, man. Like, know where you're at, because if something happens and let's say your phone is dead or, whatever, you don't have your GPS. Pay attention to landmarks,
Yes.
signs, whatever." And I remember one of my siblings was like, "But why?" Like, "Dude, just because. What do you mean why?" Like, so
There are
that you know where you're
so
at, man.
right. There are so many people that when they call, they don't know where they're at. And um, I would like to say why, but I was also probably one of those people before I started in dispatching. I really wasn't ever worried about where I was at. And
Mhm.
now I'm like, thank God for Rapid SOS and programs like that, because we just had, just this last week, we had an accident, and the lady that had went off into a creek told me a road that she was like a country mile away from to the south. And Rapid SOS put her right where she was, and we were able to get her help much more promptly than trying to rely on her to get us the information.
Oh, man. See, that stuff like that, I'm a little jealous about because I didn't get a chance to use stuff like that. It was trying to triangulate and, ping people and all this other stuff, but if they hung up and they were on a phone that we couldn't call back, then you're just kinda left there, like, "What
Hmm.
I hope the person calls back," because
Right.
there's no other way. You can't
Yeah.
call them back, and you can't find their location. Man, those are crazy times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago, really. It really wasn't that long ago that technology was still like that. There's been a technology boom in 911,
Mhm.
which has been excellent. So for you, you as you mentioned, there was some of those parts in the beginning that can be overwhelming and stuff. You're memorizing codes, you're reading policies and procedures, and you're figuring out the geography. Now, if you've lived in the area where you were working, that doesn't make it does make it a lot easier, right? But there are other things too that end up making it a little bit more overwhelming. So, when you were going through your training, how was it like when you first started taking calls?
Oh gosh, when I first started taking calls, I would say that's probably the thing that I was most nervous about. Even though I had started off in corrections and everything, I was never much of like a public speaker. I never really wanted to like have to address a whole unit or anything like that, let alone really take a phone call.
Mhm.
I'm fine sitting behind my headset and everything, but I've gotten obviously a lot more comfortable now, and I'm fine with taking phone calls. But it's very nerve wracking when you're taking your first phone call and you're like, well, what kind of call is going to come in? Because now you know it doesn't matter what line you're on. You could get an unlock on 911, or you could get a unresponsive not breathing on your admin line.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand that. And if they don't know where they're at and they're on the admin line, you're almost in like a panic trying to get them to calm down, to get them to call 911 so that you can get a better location if they don't know where they're at. And it's just, there's a lot of information that you could have to gather and or have your wits about you when you don't know what line you're taking and what's going to be on it.
Oh. You're taking me back. You're definitely taking me back because I felt the same way. I even with the 4 years of experience that I already had, when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan and finished off my career in the county that I grew up in, it was a completely different dynamic. It
Mhm.
was now a central dispatch. It wasn't just me sitting there for 8 hours doing everything, which would go to hell sometimes, and I'm, like, pulling my hair out like, "Oh my god, it's only me." But now it's with, 2 or 3 other people. We're a team, and we're learning from each other and going through, but it's the same way. You could answer non-emergency call, and it's someone who needs CPR instructions, or it's someone who's suicidal or something like that. Like, you've got all of these different things that could happen, and for me, one of the things, well, 2 things that I can mention here really quick is I remember one of the first emergency calls I took, and with the old phone system that we had at the center that I was at, if you like, you can just lift or I'm sorry, you can hit the button and it turns it into a speakerphone and then you lift the handset, because sometimes the headsets someone would forget to charge the battery, so we couldn't use the wireless headset. But so if you hit that button, it would go to speakerphone right away, right? So
Mhm.
the first thing that you would hear as you're going to pick up the phone is just straight up blood curdling screaming. And I remember looking at my trainer and she's like, she throws her hands up like, there you go. And I'm like, Elegant 911, where's your emergency? and and you just go, right? You just go into it and you start working it. But I think for me, one of the things that really tripped me out too were like medicals, the
Mhm.
medical ones. Like I could do them, but they made me nervous
Yes.
sometimes.
Exactly, I would agree. Those were, I think, one of the first. Well, it wasn't even a 911 call. It came in on an admin line, and I was still in training, but I was to the point where I could answer 911 phones. It was someone from Walmart who had called in, and they had an unconscious person out in the store, but they weren't with them. So I was like, oh, okay, like it was just general information that they knew or didn't know, and you kind of got to hang up with them. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Like I'm ready for the next one. We can amp it up a little bit, but like let's not go like full code or anything on anyone.
Right.
So
So there where you're at, are you EMD certified?
correct. I'm
You
EMD
do
certified, and we do EMD training every month. They opened that up. We have a power phone, and so that's how we do our continuation of training for that until we have to recertify.
awesome. So for those who are watching and listening, EMD is emergency medical dispatch. And some well, actually, I think there's a lot of them that have this, but there's some places that they don't take medicals and everything, so they don't need that certification. But if you're taking medicals, this is a certification that you get to be able to do it. Now, when I was doing it, we had these big cards, and we would flip depending on the questions. We would flip to those instructions and everything. But everything has been basically put on the computer now to be able to do it. But that was that was something else as well, to be taking medicals and going through those cards and then reading all of that and, just thinking, "Whoa, we did that."
Some of them can be a lot. I mean, some of the
Mhm.
cards you open and it's like the whole page. Some of them it's just like a little blip of questions and you're done. But we still have the cards in the center just for emergency purposes. But we do have, so we used to have an I am responding that had the cards built in, which I feel like there was no rhyme or reason to how those were set up. So you were
Mhm.
still searching for what you needed. Now it's been about, I want to say a year. We have a new system that when we open a call, you get the in general information, and whenever you put in whatever the incident code is, so fall or whatever, it will pop up on another screen and it will prompt us through with those questions. So it's much easier. You don't have to search for anything, much quicker.
I I do like the quickness of it because because I remember pulling out pulling out those cards, and I would depending on how I was sitting, I would hit something as I'm quickly trying to maneuver the cards because they would just be off to the side of my desk. And as soon as I knew it was a medical or whichever, I'm typing everything in, I'm talking to them, and I'm flipping through my cards based on the questions. But, if it was like someone who was going into labor or someone who was choking, like, man, those some of those were the most high, intense and kind of scary calls. And because it's all you.
Correct. And you
It's
get that
you.
major adrenaline dump and you're like trying to flip through cards or anything like that. And you're just like, your main goal is to keep your patient or your caller calm. And you're sitting here with an adrenaline dump trying to keep yourself calm. And it's a lot sometimes.
Right, yeah, and then, of course, when you're done and the adrenaline dump hits even harder, depending on the center, depending on I mean, there's a lot of different variables. You might get a chance to decompress, like, sit there and breathe through it, or you do it while you're taking the next call.
Yeah. It just depends on how busy you are, truthfully.
Yeah,
When I had my first uh, actual CPR call where we actually went through um, actually having to count out compressions and stuff like that. Um, Once my partners had gotten everything toned out and fire EMS on the way and everything, it was just me sitting there counting, and it's very eerie just because there's no other sounds. It's just you and your caller. Um, so yeah.
that is oh, man. Yeah, that is definitely one of those that, I had another flashback there. That's another one of those where, like you said, there's nothing else going on. You don't hear anything else, and sometimes depending on the call, especially if it's CPR type, you might even hear someone in the background, sniffling, like crying or something,
Hmm.
or someone who's screaming, or someone saying just get them over here as fast as you can, and you're like we are, they are, everything that we're doing right now does not delay the response. They have been on the way, they have been heading out there, but I have to give you these instructions. And sometimes people are like, why don't they understand? And my thought, or at least what I've told people in the past, is it's not that they don't understand, they're living their literal nightmare right now.
Right.
So they're just going with what they're feeling. And you can't blame people, or say
Mhm.
anything like, why do they understand? Because how would you do it? If you were the one who was calling in, how do you think you would fare? And I've talked to a lot of dispatchers and call takers who have said, I've had to call 911 before and I thought I was fully prepared. But when you're in that moment, it's like, what the hell? What's going on?
Yeah, everything just kind of goes out the window. The only thing that I wish that people could understand more, and again, it all goes to that things change when you're actually in the moment.
Hmm.
But when you have people that say, just get them there, I wish that people would know or could understand that for some of us in our centers, like in my center, there's always at least two of us, sometimes three. My partner's already read the complaint. They're already getting them there. I just have to stay on the phone with you and talk to you, and I need to get that information so we can pass it on. It's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't understand what's going on there. It's just we need to get that information for them so we can keep them updated. And I promise you, my partner is getting them on the way.
Very true. Yeah, that is definitely one thing. I agree that would love everyone to know, because there would be times that I would be talking to someone and they would be yelling that at me, or throwing out threats and just like swearing at me and stuff, and I would have to be, with a firm voice, telling them, just straight up being real with the caller, to say, listen, help is going as fast as they can to get there. The officer or whoever is not just sitting around the corner where you're at, because there's emergencies going on all over the place.
Hmm.
They're going there. I'm getting you help there as fast as possible, and being real with them, a lot of times, they would end up, responding saying, "Okay, no, no, I understand, I get it, I'm going through this," and then they start explaining themselves, I'm like, "No, no, 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 you're okay, like, it's fine, I understand what you're saying, I'm just telling you that
Right.
they're not just sitting around the corner, they're at another call that they had to leave to get to your emergency,
Mhm.
because your emergency isn't the only one that's going on, 911 does not stop."
Right.
Do you find that being just straight up with your callers sometimes kinda helps out a little bit? Because I think if you tell someone, um, like, for example, if it like, when I'm talking to, and this isn't happened, like, when my kids were way younger, but, and it is I just mean it's that kind of, mentality of being patient. When they wanted something, you're like, "Oh, Christmas is just around the corner," or, whatever, and they're like, "Okay," "You've said that before." And, it's almost the same thing with callers and stuff, that you say something that's kind of, to that same mentality, and they not so much turn on you, but they get a little defensive, right? But if
Yeah.
you're just real with them and you tell them, "Look, this is what's going on. They're going as fast as they can," they respond better to you.
There's been some people that'll respond better.
Mhm.
I've had people hang up on me too.
Oh.
So it just kind of depends on where they're at and their mental state with what's going on in front of them and stuff. And sometimes some of them will understand, and like you said, they'll apologize and they make me
Yeah.
feel bad. I'm like, I'm not trying to like tell you that you're not important or whatever the case
Right.
may be. I'm just letting you know, like I promise you, we're doing the best we can to get them there, but I can't teleport them there.
Right, for sure. So you've been taking all of these calls and everything, and you're getting into it. You're in the thick of it. Was there a moment, or whether it be with your coworkers there in the center, or a certain phone call you took, or something to that nature, that you felt like, man, I got this. Like, I'm in the right place. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
I would say that I've had a few calls where I've taken them and I felt like I've been in the right place. I've had some of those calls are like suicide calls or someone who feels like they want to commit suicide. Or one of the other calls was a guy who he had just brought his wife home from hospice and she had ended up passing like shortly after they got home. Um, and he wanted to hang up and I asked him not to. I said, just, mute the line if you want, set the phone down. In case you need me, I'm here. And I just listened to him cry, uh, but I felt like I was doing the right thing.
Oh man, those those are definitely the hard ones, and sometimes, I mean, all you can do is just kinda listen, right?
Right.
And just be there for them, and I feel like some of those calls are ones that were meant for us, and, just whether it be some sort of experience that you might have had, or something to that nature, like that one, some of these calls are meant for us, like, it was better that we were the ones who took it with that person, because we were able to comfort them a little bit better,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like sometimes, we're there to comfort them, and just be there with them in their moment, so that they're not alone.
Mhm. 110%. With that call, actually, it was kind of ironic. So his wife had cancer and they brought her home from hospice and she had passed. With my dad, when my dad had passed, he was in the hospital. We moved him to hospice. He didn't leave hospice, but he had passed in hospice and he had cancer. So it was just kind of like an eerily similar situation. So yeah, I do agree with you. I do believe that I was meant to take that call.
Oh, man. And so, along with that as well, and this story, which thank you so much for sharing that and that added piece as well. That you're right. I mean, it does kind of go together. You had already, dealt with something like that, and you were able to comfort that person in their time of need. It just it it's something that can be passed on as well to others that are coming in. Your communications officer and everything, and I don't know if you're thinking about going into being like a trainer and doing training or anything else with like the newer folks that are coming in, but this is also something that you're able to carry with you. And those watching and listening who have been in similar situations, they can relate to you in this with this type of situation as well, because everything that we're doing, day in and day out, taking phone calls, all of this, conversations like we're having right now are things that are going to be able to help the other folks that are coming in, or maybe even those who have been in dispatch for a while and didn't know how to open up because
Mm,
they felt like nobody else was going through something like that. But with you sharing that, that helps immensely. Thank you.
welcome.
Now, in that same sense, do you feel like you would end up getting into like a training position later on, or
So
rocking the front line?
currently I am CTO at our center.
Oh, awesome.
I would like to continue on, and I would like to be a sergeant one day. Hopefully, I like making sure that things are done right. I like making sure that people are trained to the best of their abilities to help them try to prepare for situations like this.
Mhm.
Talk through things, see where your empathetic side lies, and stuff like that. I would like our center to be the best that it can be for the community that we have. That's what needs to be everywhere, but obviously you have to start somewhere. So this is where I'd like to start.
That is awesome. I love that. And the fact that you actually are a CTO and everything as well, you're able to train that way. And
Mhm.
that's what I love about this profession, that the the previous guard seems to be shifting, right? All these things in our profession are shifting. And excuse me. And what I mean by that is when I first got into it, it was just like you just take your call, you go to it, you go through it, and that's it. There wasn't a lot of resources, at least for dispatch, for, kind of opening up and talking about certain things and, being a part of debriefings and all of this other stuff. But man, it's a new day.
Yeah.
And we're sharing and we're talking, and it's definitely going to help those that are in it now, but more
Mhm.
so for those who come after us, and they'll have those resources, and
Mhm.
they won't feel alone, or they won't feel like um they're not what they're doing isn't worth anything, because it is, and it's important. And I think that's what I love the most about this profession is that we just continue to evolve, and we have folks like you who are training those that are coming in that'll feel comfortable with what they're doing, that they'll feel welcomed. And when you have those elements put together, you're going to get someone who actually wants to stay and not leave.
Mhm.
And we're continually making the staffing issue better. It's not the greatest right everywhere, right? But
Right.
it's getting better with, again, with conversations like this, and again with folks like you who are bringing everything that you have and your experiences and sharing with people, because there's a lot of people that at least in the past that won't, or that wouldn't share. It would just be like, I'm just going to show you what you need to know, and
Right.
you'll learn as you go along.
I think that a lot of things are still pretty held close to their heart on stuff, and they don't like to share. I know there's some stuff that I still don't share.
Hmm.
But I do like that we are evolving and that we are getting better at being able to share our experiences and stuff, because I don't think a lot of people understand the mental health aspect for dispatchers. We may not see it, but we hear it. We know stuff that's going on. You know that you play out the other end of things, even if it's not the thing that actually happened. You can play out a scenario in your head a million different ways of what happened on the call you were on. And there are so many people who are so scared to share because they don't want to be blackballed or they don't want to be labeled or whatever the case may be. I remember when I was still back at the jail, I took CIT training, and that was a week long. And the Adams board, she has since retired, but she was talking to us and she was like, well, why won't you guys come and, you guys need to talk, you need to share, you need to get that off your chest or whatever the case may be. And we all looked around in the room at each other and we said, because no one wants their job taken away because there was such a negative connotation to mental health.
Yeah,
No one wants their job taken because they are feeling whatever type of way they're feeling. So it's a discussion that needs to be had more often, a much more non-judgmental space, much more helpful space. That way we can continue to have healthy dispatchers and we can continue to keep people in the profession and not run them off or whatever the case may be.
I agree. Fully agree there. And I think in some places, like the last center that I was at, over in Allegan, one of the things that they started doing, and I'm pretty sure they still do it now, is they were it wasn't just for dispatch. Like during training and such, we would go on ride-alongs or we would go to EMS to check out what they do or fire or whichever. Excuse me. But they would also have newer officers come into dispatch and sit for an hour or so, or from other agencies come in and sit. Because in that sense, for that portion of it, we were bridging the gap between the disciplines of public safety so
Mhm.
that they knew what we went through. And a lot of them afterwards are like, okay, for one, I could never do your job. I don't want to be, I don't want to do any of that. And
Mhm.
they were just listening and they were only in there for about an hour or so. And they had a completely new perspective on what it is that we did in the center, the types of calls that we were taking, and how it felt, how it, what happens to us as well. Excuse me. And I think that's a good thing so that everyone can learn from each other and know and respect as well
Mhm.
and recognize that we're going through the same shit. Like you
Mhm.
said, we might not be there on the scene, but we are up here. And sometimes what we create in our head from everything that we're hearing can be worse than what is actually going on there. I mean, think about an open line call.
Mhm.
You could not be hearing anything except for just little sounds here and there or breathing or whichever. And what your brain starts putting together, man, damn.
Yeah. We had, from one of our neighboring jurisdictions, they had transferred a 911 call to us, which we had only briefly heard the female because she was kind of like yelling and we knew something wasn't right, but the line had disconnected and we couldn't get her back on. Well, I had called back up to, it was Williams County above us, and they had talked to us a little bit. And between her and me, we kind of figured out an area, and my sergeant went out and when he made contact with her, they ultimately ended up arresting the guy that was there, and he had admitted that he was going to kill her that night. So it's just, it's kind of, it's little things like that that you help protect the public, whether you're the officer or not. Um, and it justifies some of the reasons that you feel like you're meant to be there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, this has been a lot of fun to have you on and
Thanks.
share your story and just your perspective on dispatch and just everything. It's refreshing. I love hearing stuff like this and just like your passion for the profession and what it is that you do. So thank you for all of that. Now, and if you as long as you feel comfortable, of course,
Mhm.
but are there any calls or a call that kind of sticks out, something that kind of, sticks with you? I know throughout anyone's career, there are a bunch of them, but there are some of those few that just they're kind of there.
I think one of the biggest calls that sticks with me is the one that I had shared earlier,
Mhm.
with the gentleman who lost his wife just because
Yeah.
it hit so close to home. Um, the other couple ones that I've had that have really stuck with me, um, are going to be there was a elderly female who hadn't heard from her husband all day, but she knew that he was going out farming. And she went out to the barn and had found him in his combine. She couldn't get up there because she was too old to get up into the combine anymore. But she said that she thought that her husband was passed away. Well, we can't verify that obviously, so we were sending everyone out there, and that was the one that was more my first CPR call. The person that actually ended up on scene down there was my cousin, or I should say, it was my cousin, but on the other side of the marriage side of the family.
Oh, okay.
But he he had ended up down there, and he was able to get up in the combine, and he had performed CPR until the responders got there and stuff and were able to get him actually out of the combine and stuff. He ultimately had passed, but
Mm.
you kind of remember your people that they're just in shock on the phone with you. You ask them if there's anything that you can do. Do you need me to call anyone? Stuff like that. So those are more my memorable um, phone calls that I've taken 911 wise. We had another one where a semi had went across US 24, which is one of our major highways. Out with you being from Indiana, I don't know if you know about 24 or not, but
I take 24 every time I go to Detroit to fly out.
oh, there you go. Well, then imagine a semi going across all four lanes of traffic, and he flipped. And he had actually, I don't know if they ultimately believe that he ended up having a heart attack.
Mhm.
His company that he trucked for had a camera in the cab, and they were calling in a welfare check, and I had to put him on the phone with my sergeant because he had passed.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just, they're like, well, it looked like he fell asleep. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Let me get my sergeant on the phone for you because, it's just, it's not a good end. And you're not the one who wants to be the one to deliver that message unless they give you that ability to do that. But
Right. Wow. Yeah, and that is definitely a road that I take almost throughout every year. So that's one that and the way that it kinda happened too and, like, the phone call and stuff, some of those are this one especially is kind of interesting that, they were able to see what was going on, however,
Mhm,
they had a camera in there and such, and were calling for a welfare check, but then it ultimately ended up like that. But you're right, a lot of times you have to transfer it off to an officer to give that information because let's just say for example, this was just at a residence, this was instead at a residence, not a car crash or anything like that, but,
mhm,
someone had passed and a family member is there that you're talking to and that you ask them, "Is there anyone that I can call for you?" Because like you said, we're there to help them, and if we can help them in that sense to go that extra mile, let's do it, that's
mhm,
that's why we're there. But if they ask you to call a family member, let's say like what their son or daughter or something like that, and you call them and say, "Your father's at such and such house, or at their house. He needs you to go there. There's a medical emergency or whatever." And they're asking you all these questions. You can't tell them exactly what it is, especially if it was a death or whichever, because you could possibly cause an accident that way. And I've
right.
told this to people before, and they're like, "How? How is that possible? Why are you going to lie to the caller or the person that you're talking to?" And it's like it's not that I wanna lie,
Right.
or it's just that if you think about it, you're giving this person a shock to their senses.
Hmm.
They're gonna wanna haul ass to get to their family member because you just told them that there was a death or something, and they could possibly be in an accident. That's what I mean, and then, of
Hmm.
course, people are like, "Oh, okay. I get what you're saying."
Right.
But it could be something like that.
Hmm.
So, a lot of times, like, as you were saying, you gotta switch it off to the sergeant or whoever, like like with the call that you were talking about. Man, I think that's for me, I'm pretty sure that's a first for me to hear like a scenario like that where they were watching him on the camera. It was a welfare check, but it ended up turning out that the person kind of had a medical emergency and
Right.
then had this accident. Was it just that person or were there any other cars involved?
So no other cars were involved. They did go out into the field right there. And that was my first like major 911 call,
Mhm.
where it was kind of, you're shocked to the senses. You're not used to dealing with this kind of a caliber of thing. And depending on the style of dispatching center that you're in, because a lot of people don't realize that there are different styles of dispatching centers where they have call taking centers and dispatching centers, and we do everything.
Yeah,
So my poor partner is like over there struggle bussing, trying to get everyone toned out and sent that way. And you're still trying to get information, yet you need to get off the phone so that you can help her when there's nothing else that you can necessarily do on that 911 call. And it's, I guess, I don't want to say it's not necessarily anything else that you can't do. The people are there and they're trying to do the best that they can. They couldn't get into the cab with the guy, but they were there and they were watching for responders to get there. So, at what point do you make that call that you disconnect from that one so that your partner isn't drowning in all of the radio traffic that's happening and trying to get emergency personnel there?
yeah, I think that's where those and other disciplines of public safety or those in the general public end up being flabbergasted at the amount of decisions and everything that needs to be done so fast, and it's you who's
Mhm.
doing it all in that moment, and people are like, "I don't know how you do it." And, like, even now, my siblings, when I've talked to them about times in dispatch, they'll say, "I don't know how you did that for all that time," and I would say, "I don't know either."
I was gonna say there's some days where I ask myself, like, I don't know how I did whatever happened that day. I've been on 911 calls where I've had to take traffic stops and 911's ringing in the background. Your partner's trying to get all the traffic that she can and also answer 911. I just don't think a lot of people realize how much actually goes into it. And then
Right.
admin lines on top of it. And
Yeah, because none of it stops. You
no.
just you just keep going, and if you do get a moment after, like, a big incident has happened, I remember specifically, like, we did something, and it was a good turnout and all, and when we were all off the phone, I remember, somebody had stood up and said, "Is anybody on the radio? Anybody on the phone?" We're like, "Nope," and then we jumped up, we're like, "Yes!" Like, we did that, like, we just did all of that, and we're just high-fiving because those are the people that are there with you in those moments where you can't even imagine and other people can't even imagine what it is that you're going through, but every time I see a big incident happening, I immediately go to, "I wonder what's going on in dispatch right now."
Absolutely. One of our bigger incidents that I've been in that we had a major storm that was coming in.
Mhm.
We were working second shift. Third shift comes in to start at 10. The sergeant for third shift came in and she's like, you and you're staying. And I'll be like, she was the one that was just going to run the center while the four of us all sat at our councils and were logged in. And it was so weird because it was just like, all of a sudden we have cameras that we have that are outside and stuff like that. All the cameras just went black and it was like you were on an island somewhere and you just existed to take calls. By the time we were done that night, we had, it doesn't sound like a ton, but in that short amount of time, we had 109 calls that had come in. And you want to talk about feeling so helpless because our screen was full. We had like every fire department that we have volunteer and for Defiance. Everyone was toned out. People were calling in. They're like, oh, my deck's on fire. And I'm like, how close is it to the house? And they're like, oh, like 20 foot out. And I'm like, if it gets closer, call me back and let me know. And I will try to get them there quicker. But they are responding to everything else. And you had people that were just like, oh, okay. Like you felt bad, but what do you do? Everyone's trying to put out other fires. If it gets closer to your house, let us know.
Yeah. Oh god. That, You've been taking me back this whole episode, which is always good because I love conversations like this. But what you were just saying made me think about this raging fire that we had that ended up taking out multiple houses, and we had a bunch of officers out there and volunteer fire and EMS and everything evacuating people from the area, and we're trying to help them with different addresses, different phone numbers, trying to call people and stuff. And I, in the midst of this chaos, I take a phone call from a guy who says, okay, so I just wanted to call really quick because I see that there are a lot of people that are evacuating. Should I evacuate as well? And as I went to say something to him, and he goes, "My house just caught on fire too. I'm leaving." And then he hung up, and I'm like, "Okay." And and there was an officer who had gone by, like, that area and was like, "This person's running out of the they're all coming out of the house." So and I had been trying to call back and nobody was answering, so I was like, "Okay, this person did leave already." But I thought, um, probably. Like, if it's that close to you, like
Right.
with yours, there was, some distance still, but, like, with this one, the guy, it was already that close, and then his house caught as well. It's like, "Okay,
Wow.
you need to go."
Yeah.
That
Get
was
out now,
yeah,
please.
that was one of those nights that are just like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go to sleep when I get home because I'm so wired from the
Mhm.
craziness of this shift. It is nuts. So, again, it has been amazing to have you on and hear your story and just everything that you do. Thank you for the job that you do and just for the passion that you have for it. Like it's this has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So one last question before we go into the wrap up of the or as we go into the wrap up of this episode, and it's one that I ask everyone at the end of the podcast, and that is from the time that you've had, even from like the beginning of public safety and all of that, but more so for dispatch, if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now to speak to yourself in the beginning, like what's some advice that you would give yourself?
Oh goodness. Um, just to never doubt yourself. Always keep doing what you know is right. And be there to help the best that you can. Like you said earlier, we're there on people's worst days. And I don't think a lot of people think that we take, our work home or our calls to heart. I do. I can't speak for everyone, but I do.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't change that.
That's perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see everything that you continue to do in this profession and just the fact that you're also a trainer. And for those coming in, they are very lucky to have you. So, again, thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you so much.
So I'll be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments or questions, or you ever want to be a guest on this podcast, you can email me, and it's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us all over social media. You can also become a supporter of the podcast by doing so on Patreon, Facebook, or even Circle. Circle is where I have this community that I'm starting to build. And be patient because I'm I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff going over there for that one and doing community events and everything else. But again, that's on Circle, and it's just under Within the Trenches Media as of right now. But to make everything easier, you can simply go to links.co/WTT podcast, and that's links with two eyes. I put up one finger, I meant two fingers. Two eyes.co/WTT podcast, and you can find everything there. Email, all of my social media, where to follow, the latest episode, and where to listen. You can purchase Imagine Listening, the book, as well as pre-order book number 2, and it's also on Audible. The audiobook is there as well, and I had the honor and privilege, wow, I can't talk, which is funny with the part that I'm about to say. I had the honor and privilege of voicing my book. Oh, that's so funny. I just jacked that whole thing up. But I promise you, the audiobook is awesome. And I didn't have any mess ups in that. So there you go. But you can check that out there. You can also become a subscriber by going to links.co/WTT podcast. And you can check out the link for more podcast merchandise. It is all there for you in one spot so that you don't have to go all over the place. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X and LinkedIn Live. And then you can listen 24/7, and that's on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.
You just listened to a Code 7 Network podcast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to WTTpodcast@gmail.com.